Welcome to another car review. This time I'm in a Mazda RX8, and this is my first time driving a rotary car, or as you should say, a Wankel engine car. And I'm kind of surprised because it makes all that power out. It's the tiny little 1.3 liters of fury, 238 horsepower out of that engine, and 159 pound-feet of torque. Now the engine makes max power at 8,500 RPM and max torque around 5,000. So you really have to rev this out, and these brakes are pretty darn good. Let's see what a turn does if you take it nice. Oh man, this is great. Crazy. You know, I look at that tach and it just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. This is the highest revving car that I've driven to date. And when I first started driving this, I was short shifting it all the time. It's a very, very weird experience knowing that you can go all the way to 9 grand and it makes max power at that high of a level. Now if we bring up some performance figures, 0 to 60 in these cars, 6-second range, quarter mile, 15 seconds. Now right now we're in 6th gear, we're driving 60 miles an hour, and it revs just a little bit over 3 grand, which is not bad at all, considering that it has such a lofty RPM limit. One of the major points that this car made when it came out was true 50-50 weight balance. And another thing that this car has, you don't really think of mid-engine cars when you think front-engine cars, but it is a mid-engine car because most of the engine is behind the front axle. Try these brakes out here a little bit more. Oh, this is glorious, man, glorious. And the sound that this car makes, it is so, well, I almost say, and it's probably a lot of people saying this, it reminds me of my little 2-stroke moped that I had in Holland. And this actually also has another thing in common with the 2-stroke moped that I had in Holland, and that is that it uses oil. That's right, it uses oil to lubricate the apex seals. So every time you mention apex, usually you think, oh, that's a corner. No, when you talk rotary engines or Wankel engines, it's the seals. And sometimes people start to wince when you say that, because that is one of the main things that goes out on a rotary engine is the apex seals, because they don't get enough lubrication. Now there's a couple of things that you can do. Now the first thing that I read up on is that if you have to scratch, get the 2009 version, because it has 3 oil injectors instead of the 2 that this one has. Another thing you can do is pre-mix your fuel. Now of course it's not going to be 150 like my 2-stroke moped, it's going to be something different, but look it up on forums. There are plenty of true gurus out there that can tell you how to properly take care of this car, and that will stave off premature engine wear. And also, you know, these engines are very, very simple. Like 2-stroke engines, does not have valves, so there's less chance of that screwing up. But the apex seals is something that is somewhat of a worry if you don't take care of this car properly. Now, the owner said that if he drives for mileage, he shifts at 4,000 RPM. Not a lot of power there. It really starts to gradually make more and more and more as more revs you make, but still, it's not bad at all. And setting off, this clutch, very, very light. Not my favorite, but it probably makes it easy for a first-time driver to get a handle on this. This doesn't make a lot of torque down low, so it's probably very easy to stall it. But with that clutch being so light, I don't see much of an issue. Now, the one thing that this car has kind of against it is that it has to go up against the FD in the case of looks. Now, this is a 4-door car. The FD is a 2-door car, so you can't really compare them. And also, the FD is called RX7, and this is called RX8. So, please, let's just agree to disagree and say that this is something completely different. Now, if this was called the RX7, it would have been, well, pretty bad. I'm gonna have to be honest. But it's called the RX8, so it doesn't matter anymore. And another thing, this car, in my book, is super cool. Why? Because my man crush drove it. And you know who that is? Any guy that talks about a man crush, they can only talk about one guy. Wolverine drove it. Hugh Jackman in the second X-Men movie drove this car. And it's also the first time that I saw this car, and I was like, that's a pretty quirky car right there. I kind of like it. You know, obviously, I still lived in the Netherlands. This was, I believe, 2003 or 2004 when that movie came out, and I already had my then girlfriend from the United States, and it started to get serious, so I'm like, yeah, I really got to save money to move over, and here I am, sitting in the United States in an RX-8 that I first saw in the X-Men 2 movie back in the Netherlands. That makes any sense. I just can't believe how much power this thing makes out of that small engine displacement. Nicely too. I mean, man, I said it before, but this car surprised me. I can totally see why people get these cars now, because it's quirky and it makes it power so effortlessly throughout the band. Like my Mustang, it really wakes up at 3,000 RPM and you start to feel that thrust, so that big engine start to provide that horsepower. This, it goes gradual. It just keeps going and going and going and going and going until you have to shift, which you have to shift at 9 grand. And max power 8,500, as I said before, so nuts. You enjoy these brakes a lot. And the shifter also very, very direct. And when we talk about the interior styling, age has not been kind to this car. This is, of course, all hard plastic. You see a couple of cracks over there, but, you know, you also have to realize 2004, cars way over 10 years old. And Texas Sun is not kind to these cars at all. And you'll probably find that in a lot of other RX-8s as well. I just can't get enough of that. You can just rev to 8 grand, 9 grand, and it's completely happy doing it. There's also no vibration whatsoever. It just keeps going. And you look at it, it's like, am I really revving that high? Is that really possible without any vibration? But, you know, it's the wonder of Wankel. Felix Wankel really had their stuff together. But I was talking about the interior, and of course, these seats, they're older seats. They don't really have as much side bolstering as I would like. But to say that they're bad? No, not at all. Back seat, it is a 4-seat car, but I'm 5'11". If I tried to sit back there, I kind of have to fold myself. But if you're shorter driver, there should be no issue. Trunk space is nice too, but unfortunately it does not have the ability to lower the seat, so you do not get as much trunk space as a person would like nowadays, because if a car doesn't have lowered seats, then it really limits to what you can take. But it does have a ski hatch, so if you have skis, you want to take this on a ski trip, you can do that in this car. Don't know if you want to though, because rear-wheel drive and all that with snow, usually not a good idea, but you have the opportunity, the option. Another thing that I do really like about the interior is that it has bucket seats in the back. You see, there's this one guy right now in my blind spot, and I cannot see the dude unless I look at that little thing. These mirrors are absolutely freaking horrible. You have to double check yourself, triple check yourself before you change lanes in this car. So overall, I really do enjoy the way this car looks on the inside. The number one thing for me is that big tack that you have in the middle. Digital speedo, I like analog better, but in this car it just works because you don't really want to look at the speed anyway. You want to look at how many RPMs you're making. Another thing that I find very, very quirky about this car is that you find triangle shapes everywhere. Now everyone mentions it, but as soon as you start noticing them yourself, you just find it very, very funny. You got it on the hood, you got it back here. The OEM floor mats also rotary symbol on it. Shifter rotary symbol. The headlights, there's a tiny little rotary symbol in there. I mean, okay, we get it. It's a rotary engine, it's a Wankel engine. It doesn't have to come back everywhere, but it's fun to see that kind of stuff though. Now when we talk about the exterior styling, and if you see it separately from the RX-7, which you should, I actually think it looks pretty freaking awesome. Now the number one total feature that I like is the suicide doors in the back. You know, you can't really see it when it's closed, obviously, but when they open up, it is just a feature that you don't see very much anymore, and I like it a lot. Another thing that I do like on this, when you look over the hood, is that it kind of has Corvette-like flares on the front, and that's a pretty nice touch on a car like this. Another thing that I do like are the stock rims on this car. Now usually stock rims are kind of hit or miss. They either fit the car or they don't fit the car at all. I think that these rims are pretty spot on. When you look at the rear section, I think it just comes together. The twin exhaust and the taillights, it just works. As a final conclusion on the car, do I like it? Yes, of course I do like it. It's quirky. I love the engine sound, even though I kind of hate it. I hate that it doesn't have any torque down low, but I love that it makes all the power up high. I think it would be a good starter car just as long as you educate yourself on it. And I don't know if we're going to hear anything because this car is pretty darn quiet. But we're going to try it anyway. We're definitely going to go down to first. Hey, birds. Yeah, nothing. Luke, thank you so much for letting me drive your RX8. Been a super cool experience because I've never driven a rotary car before. I hope you enjoyed the car review, and I'll see you on the flip side. No hill assist even, right?
No.
Oh, we're going backwards.
And this is bad. I need to get this adjusted, like really.
Well, it's holding us.
Oh, it'll hold.
Now.
It just, yeah, I can't slide with it.
What, slide like you want to do a drift?
Handbrake turn, yeah.
Here. Ooh,
Oh,
look at that! Look at that! Hello. Luckily, we did all the performance driving already. We're good.
What?
Oh, that looked like our freaking camera right there. I looked at it and said, "Oh no!"
The hardest thing on the rotary engine that causes the most wear is the initial warm-up cycle and the startup.
Oh yeah.
Like on the 787B, the Le Mans car.
The four-rotor?
Yeah, when they pulled that off the track after the 24-hour race and cracked the engine open, they literally were like, it's ready for another one, because there just wasn't wear, because it was always at peak RPMs.
That's freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
If you want to have true power out of these cars, you need to swap in a 20B, man.
Oh, yeah.
3-rotor. How crazy would that be? And then keep it stock looking.
Yeah.
You know, put a 20B in it, 3-rotor stock looking. People are they're probably gonna go nuts.
Yeah. You're looking 15 grand at the bottom of that.
Yeah, forget about that noise. Yeah. Besides, if you want to power out of these rotary engines, you really need to go FD anyway.
Or
turbo.
REW, the FD engine. A lot of people put those in these cars when these engines go out.
I've read something that someone put an LS in it. Well, they LS everything.
A lot of people put LS.
Freaking LS motor in this car.
Yeah.
I don't know, it probably screws up the genomic, like the 50-50 weight distribution. You know,
I mean, you end up with a small Corvette.
Yeah. Well, that's like an MX5 and Miata, you know.
LS.
LS swap.
Yeah.
Someone probably LS swapped the Mustang too. I know they did. Those Fox bodies, race cars. You can't make power with no Ford. You gotta put in a Chevy in it. And then it opens up here. And then that and this. Man, there's more room in this than any other car that I've driven. What a cool console. Now you have to get out. And I won't be able to do this when I'm 60.